Welcome to the ICSS Sunday Morning's Marxist Forum. A reminder before we start, we are recording our presentations and the following discussions, and we are posting these on our wider audience. The videos will be available on our YouTube channel, ICSS Marxist, and our website, icssmarx.org, in the next couple of days. We're also on Rumble, and I'll post the links later in our chat today. Please visit our website, icssmarx.org, to view our past programs, sign up to receive weekly notification emails about upcoming programs, view the schedules, contact us, or to donate to us and support this educational forum. I would also like to thank those who have and still continue to support us through their valuable donations. My name is Mehmet Bayram, and I will be hosting this session on Sunday, March the 29th, 2026. For over 15 years, ICSS Sunday Morning's Marxist Forum programs have been a platform for diverse presentations on various topics. This meeting is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate. The opinions expressed here are those of the participants, and they do not necessarily represent those of ICSS. However, we are united in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, and we believe that his work remains relevant today. Our understanding is taken from Karl Marx's 11th thesis on pure power. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. So, today we have a war on our hands. As capitalist contradictions mount and the ruling classes can't or won't find solutions for human suffering, techno-fascists, corporations, and imperialistic interests have pushed us into this war that will make everything worse for the working classes. However, war is good for business. The working class in the US is unfortunately not organized politically in its class party to resist this war in a meaningful, united, and a strong way. Lacking this political organization to unite the labor as a solid opposing force, the resistance against the war is led by liberal forces who keep voting for more and more military budgets and support the war while pretending to oppose it. 149 House Democrats joined hands to gift Trump at $840 billion for the military. Liberals are cheering the hare to run and escape while at the same time rooting for the hound to catch the hare. This war is an imperialist war for the working classes in the US, but it is a war of independence, a defense against an aggressor for the Iranian people. Lenin correctly states what to do in imperialist war. He says, turn the imperialist war into civil war. All consistent class struggle in time of war, all mass action earnestly conducted must inevitably lead to death. Lacking their political organization, a mass working class party that could have led the movement against the war and turned it into a civil war, the only organization the workers have today are the labor unions and their confederations in the US. The question then is, can the economic democratic struggle organizations like the unions tackle such a task? Yes, fighting against the war that targets the living standards of the working class is an economic democratic struggle, and yes, the unions should be shouldering this task. But even if that occurred, would that be enough? Would that guarantee a world without wars, without classes, without exploitation that lies at the root of major contradictions of our world? The struggle then shifts from an economic democratic nature to a political struggle, which is highly needed. This is why we need to have a mass working class party to lead that struggle. Now, our speaker on this topic today is a professor, a researcher on labor unions and their unfortunate collaboration with the US's imperial endeavors, and a writer. Tim Scipes, PhD, is a professor emeritus of sociology at Purdue University Northwest in Westville, Indiana, and a former industrial printer. His latest book, Unions, Race and Popular Democracy, Building a Progressive Labor Movement, will be published in August 2026 by Cornell University Press. So, welcome, Kim, and the platform is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mehmet. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I'm going to approach things a little differently than how Mehmet um, presented it, but I'm going to come around in a way that I think will make sense and get back to what he is talking about. So, if you can just stay with me a little bit, that would be good. I'm going to take some leaps across history, very brief here, but I think they might help us understand something. George Schmidt, who was one of the finest teacher organizers in the country, he was a member of the Chicago Teachers Union, once said that going back to the pharaohs, since then the elites have always screwed over the working people. He says that they always have and they always will, and they will do that as long as we do not force them to stop. And that's been true ever since. In the U.S., there's been three times where we've seen this true. First was the general strikes by enslaved blacks in 1864-65, playing a key role in defeating the Confederacy and continuing on through Reconstruction up to about 1877. The next big period was in the 1930s and 40s with the rise of the CIO. In fact, that's what my book is about that will be out in August, and I highly commend it to you to check that out. And then, of course, the third graph was in the 60s and late 60s, early 70s with the civil rights, women's, anti-war movements, etc. Now, I want to go back and talk about the CIO years briefly. So that what I found in my research, now the CIO has been presented as a monolithic labor organization made up of different unions. It was seen as progressive, and it was all good things to all good people type of thing. Tremendous stuff. But in my book, in my study, what I did was I looked to see if that was true, if all the unions in the CIO were that way. And what I found out, I examined the unionization in steel and meatpacking in the Chicago and Northwest Indiana area between 1933 and 1955, the CIO years. What I found out was that there were two completely different versions of trade unionism within the CIO. One was what we call business unionism, and the other was what I call social justice unionism. Now, the difference of them is might not seem very much, but it's very important. Business unionism focused its efforts on the workplace, fighting for things like better pay, seniority, rule of law in the workplace, so cutting down on arbitrary work by foremen, vacations, things like that. The social justice unionism, which the meatpackers exemplified, not only fought oppression in the workplace, but they fought oppression in the communities in which the workers lived as well. So this ended up taking on fighting things particularly like white supremacy and racism. In 1939, in racist segregated Chicago, out of 14 packing house local unions, 8 were headed by African Americans in 1939. So the packing house workers directly confronted it, while the steel workers ignored it. Now, I don't want to go on and talk much about this, but this is it. This is all covered in my book, and by understanding that there were these two competing types of unionism, what this allows us to understand is what happened after the war. Basically, you had three groups of the three main unions of the CIO. The steelworkers were politically on the right within the CIO. Auto workers under Walter Reuther were in the center, and the left was headed by United Electrical Workers, UE. Now, what happened after the war and Reuther getting elected in 46 is Reuther swung the auto workers to the right with the steel workers, and together they turned on the left. And they ended up throwing out, as probably most of you know, they threw out 11 unions, somewhere about 750,000 to 1 million of the best trade unions were thrown out of the CIO in 1949 by the right wing of the CIO. So this was not caused by the U.S. government. It was not caused by the McCarthy period. It came from within the labor movement. And Walter Reuther, in particular, was responsible for this, but so was Phil Murray of the CIO. So I argue that since 1949, we have not had a labor movement in the United States. We have had a trade union movement. Now, the difference there is that a trade union movement only focuses on its own members, where a labor movement, on the other hand, focuses on the well-being of working people in general. So, like I say, we have not had a labor movement since 1949. Now, this has had a bunch of impact on us and the American society. So I have to jump ahead. In 1984, I started looking at the changes in the global economy and how they were affecting American workers. And so I started this. I've continued to look at this episodically over the years. And I want to bring you to some material to show you what's going on and try to explain this to you. Now, this is going to be kind of complex. If you're taking notes, don't. Just put it down, because I'm going to get into some stuff. You can't follow everything because I only have a short time. I've got to skim a lot of stuff, but you can come back and look at the tape version of this that will help you. But I want to take you back to an article of mine. So let me share my screen. I'll show you. All right, and I'm going to share that. Okay, this is the publications page. These are my publications. This is my website. It's the URL that's on the announcement for today. It's very easy to find in that way. These are some of the books I have published. You can see on the KMU of the Philippines, on the AFL-CIO's foreign policy, a couple of books on building global labor solidarity, and then my new book, Unions, Race, and Popular Democracy, which will be out, like I said, in August. So what I'd like you to do, not now, but if you want to follow up on this, you come to this page and then you just go down, and there's a bunch of stuff about me. Don't worry about that. But I want to get you to come down here to most recent publications. You click on that little X, and what this does, this opens up a list of articles I have published since 2004. It's a long list. I've got diarrhea of the pen, etc. But there's all kinds of things if you're interested. But I want you to go down to 2009. So you just scroll down that list. Oh, like I said, I have diarrhea of the pen. 2009. And to this article here, an alternative perspective for the global South. Neoliberal economic policies in the United States, the impact of globalization on a northern country. All right, so you click on this, and this takes you to the Indian Journal of Politics and International Relations. I tried several academic publications in the United States. They would not pick this up, so I had to get it published in India, which I proudly did. And this is a long, this has the whole issue that this was published in. But the second one is my article right here, starting on page 12. And I want to take you down to it so I can show you some things that are pretty interesting. Let's see. All right, here's my article. This is stuff I highly recommend each of you read. It's got a lot of detail. I have never seen this material published anywhere else in the world. So it's pretty special, and I would suggest everybody do this. Now, this article was written, most of the data is up to about 2007, and then about 2007 is the latest, but you'll see some pretty interesting things by this. Now, I want to start off with this one, and again, you can't copy these notes down, so don't just put your pen and paper down. All right, this is talking about U.S. family income. Now, I have to explain a little thing. When I'm a sociologist, and when sociologists look at a society, we try to understand changes going on in the society. And so what we do is we line up incomes from the highest to the lowest and split them literally into fifths. This is an arbitrary decision. You take 1/5, you put a line at it, you go the next fifth, etc. So you can have four lines. Now, this number that we're going to see in the first year, because I'm going to start in 1947, this first number, this 11,758, is the top income of the person that's highest in the lowest 20%, so the lowest quintile. Okay, and we see that going along to the right. You see that for each different quintile. Although, by the way, the U.S. government does not release that data for anybody above the 95th percentile. Okay, now what we do is we compare what it was in the first period to the second period. So here I'm looking at 1947 to 1973, and by the way, the inflation's been taken out. These are real numbers. They are comparable. So what you see in that first group right up here is in 47, somebody at the top of the fifth quintile, the lowest quintile was 11,728. By 1973, it had gone up to 23,144. And that's a difference of 11,396. So by dividing that into the original thing, you see that the income has improved by 97%. 100% would mean it's doubled in real income, so money in your pocket. And that's true for all these different quintiles. You see 100%, that double. 107% for folks in the middle. 101%, and in fact, up to the top quintile was 91%. So what you're seeing in reality, two things. One, real incomes are about doubling across the quintiles, and they're pretty equal in matching. I mean, the lowest one is 91%. The 107 is the top. But you can see doubling of income and being pretty equal. This is the period from 1947 to 1973, which is the era known as, this is where the American dream comes from and all this. It really was happening. But then if you go down from 73 to 2001, what do you see? I'm going to quicken this up a little bit and say that the difference there is only $3,323, and that's only a 14% increase. And what you see is that the second got to 19%, the third 20%. The point I'm trying to make is that people were making much less income after inflation stuff, and that the lower you got, the less increase you got. So that goes across. And again, this is stuff you can't keep up with me. There's stuff, but it's worth reading about. Now, where you can see this real easily is that we annualize the growth rate for one, and you see during the first period, the 47-73, almost everybody had about the same rate of growth per year. These are annual figures. But by 2001, you see those figures vary dramatically. So the lowest quintile only made a 0.48%, less than half of a percent increase, while the top one, the 95th percentile, made 1.66. Hold on for a minute and let me take this to another level. Okay, come on. Oops. All right. Now, the Bush administration, W's administration, hid their data for quite a while and finally opened up. So now we look at the difference between 2001, 2005, excuse me, and what we see is the lowest income lost income by $851, and as did the bottom four income. So the bottom 80% of the U.S. society lost income during this period of 2001, 2005, the first 4 years of the Bush administration. Okay. And again, if we want to put it up, we can compare with these early periods, and what you see, again, the bottom 4% lost money. Now, you can go on. I'm not going to say much about it, but it shows that our income inequality was worse than some of the poorest countries on earth, such as Bangladesh, Cambodia, Laos, Mozambique, Uganda, and Vietnam. So this is having a big impact on American people in general, and these figures have never been shared elsewhere. Okay, so what you're seeing is over the time, especially as we get into the 2000s, the situation for many Americans is more comparable to those countries in the global South than to supposedly the global North. So what we see is there's been a war on the U.S. working class that has started and has continued. Now, I haven't been able to take it later than 2007. Because the government has changed the way they compute things and all this. But I highly recommend each of you coming to this article, taking the time to read, and then sharing it. The point I want to make here is that Americans have been under attack since particularly 1980, and this has continued. Not only that, but we can see in the national debt, our national debt in 1981, when Reagan came in, was at $0.9 trillion. By 2007, let's see, where did I put it? By 2007, it was $8.5 trillion in the whole, and today it's $39 trillion plus. Also, you see the percentages compared to the gross national product. It was 64% in 2007. Today, it's about 123. So, in other words, the income inequality has grown. It's gotten worse, and it continues to grow, and it's going to keep going. So, I want to stop my share and go back. Now, so what I'm saying is that the war on the U.S. working class has been going on for decades now, for over 40 years, and it's continuing to hurt. Now, let's flash forward quickly to the war in Iran. As you all know, Iran does not threaten the United States, did not threaten the United States, and this was Bush's choice, this is Trump's choice to go to war, and that's what's happening. Now, just keep in mind that not only is it causing tremendous damage in Iran, which we're getting told plenty of times, but what we're starting to see is more reporting out of Israel and the Gulf states where the Iranians have been able to strike out and whatever. In any case, we need to stop this war as much as possible. Now, where I want to tie these two things together is that how do we do this? And I think one of the things that we on the left, broadly speaking, have failed to do is tie up with working class people in this country. Not to preach to them or stuff, but to join them in solidarity to support each other, fighting for better economic conditions, of course, for all of us, but also against wars and against the U.S. empire. Because what I'm arguing is that particularly since the end of World War II in 1945, the United States has not just been another country, as we've always been told, but in reality, it's been the center. It's tried to dominate the rest of the countries of the world. Obviously, it didn't dominate the Soviet Union and its empire until that fell apart in 1991. Since then, the U.S. government has been able to do whatever it wants to up to now. But I think it's important not only just to try to stop the war against Iran, but to do this by reaching out and trying to find um, uh, working class people to join us. We can't assume they're going to join automatically. We have to reach out. Now, real quickly, and then I'll shut up and we can take a break. What I what I would argue is that first of all, this means we starting organizations. We find 5 or more people to join together so we can work together. One of the things that the younger organizers today are not understanding when they learn about the 60s, and most of them know about the 60s and of course early 70s, when most of us probably came of age, et cetera, et cetera. But what they don't understand is at the heart of these different movements, whether it's the civil rights movement, the women's movement, or the anti-war movement, was that there was organization behind them. These were not just individuals coming out. You always had organization at the core. And they're not understanding this from what I can see. And part of the thing that we have to do is remember this organization and go back and form organizations of people that we can work with over time. And then through that, reach out to various working class organizations. And this means things like the PTA, might mean churches, this might mean civil rights groups, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm going to argue as I'm going to stop is that this ongoing economic war has taken place against all Americans over the last 40 years. It's gotten worse and certainly hurts those at the bottom worse. They've done that. That this war in Iran is not in any of our interests, that we need to stop it. And the best way we can stop it, we work to stop it, which gives us something after the war, is by organizing ourselves and organizing our friends to build organizations and then to go out and reach out to working class organizations where we get opportunities to speak and build alliances and things like that to build our social power, because this war is going to stop eventually and hopefully sooner than later. But we need to have something that lays the groundwork. And I argue that this approach will give us the best shape, to put us in the best shape that when the war ends, we can continue because we've built some of these alliances and we can keep building on what's been built so far. So with that, thank you. I hope this has made sense. It's been very quick, and I apologize for so much in such a little time, but I think it's necessary to understand this from a larger historical perspective. Okay, Mehmet, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kim. Really appreciate it. I'd like to remind people before our QA session that this is a comradely meeting, and we are limiting the question and comments to 2 minutes. And we'd like to also remind that when people asking questions, please stay on the subject and also try to not try to ask only one question, and try not to go over the 2 minute limitation. So by next week we are going to have Ali Ergun from Turkey. He's an editor and he's also very active in the events happening. So April 5th, he's going to be talking about what's happening in Turkey, in the Middle East region, in the Kurdish question, which is actually at the heart of what's happening in Iran, because United States and other imperialists are trying to have the Kurds stand up against Iran. And so far, Kurds have not bitten that bait. So it will be very interesting also what it means for Syria, Iraq, and so on and so forth. So we'd like to see you next week, come again with that. And with that, I would like to see if, yeah, Richard Wright's hand is up. So go ahead, Richard, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, I didn't even know I raised my hand, but I'll take the opportunity. Thank you for your presentation, Kim.
You're welcome.
I had some interesting some background. Anyways, I'm down here in Texas. I've been an organizer down here, an activist down here for some 40 years now. And so I have some background in what you're talking about. I also have a degree in economics. Well, one of my degrees is in economics. And so I posted some comments in the chat. But what I'm interested in is you mentioned that your take on the people today, the organizers today, are not aware of the 60s. I think I take a little umbrage with that. I think they are aware of the 60s. I think that the impression I get uh, is that they're they're very much into the revolutionary aspects of the 60s and not there's a lot of organizing that goes on, but it's organizing within the Democratic Party. There's the what I call the managerial aspects of political. Anyways, could you maybe comment a little bit on your observation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rich. It's not that they're not familiar with the 60s and 70s. They are. I think many of the activists are, but they're not. In my experience and what I've seen is they don't understand that at the heart of the anti-war movement, the women's movement, the civil rights movement was different organizations. They think, right now we've got, in my opinion, almost a fetishism of, people voluntarily going out into the streets and joining each other in these mass mobilizations, and they're great, but they also are not sustainable. You have to have organizations, in my opinion, to sustain these struggles. And they're not building these organizations. So that means they're gravitating to whoever shows any type of organization, the Democratic Party being one of them. And I think that's a problem. They need to understand, they need to learn about health, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the Black Panthers, SNCC. They don't know about these organizations. They don't know about the various women's organizations like Red Stockings or whatever. They don't know about a lot of the organizations in the anti-war movement, etc. And I think this is part that we have failed to let them know about and to argue they need to learn about these things. Because this stuff doesn't happen automatically. You don't just put out a call and everybody responds. We've seen great response with the No Kings movement, but we've also seen, next week in large cases, a lot of these people won't be involved because it's sort of a one-time thing. They need to build organization, is my argument. Okay, I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you. Next, I have Raj. Raj, go ahead, please, unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. Tim, that was very valuable research that you did and presented the data. You have a data from about end of the war to 73 and then 73 to 2007, if I remember correctly, or
It was
not.
broken into two periods from 73 to 2001 and then 2001 to 2005.
Yeah, but if you go from 2005 to 25, which would be the data available, I suspect it even is sharper decline. In fact, probably show the decline in the lower 3/5 of the workforce, at least if not 4/5. So there's an actual dropping because I can see that 2/3 of the people are not able to live month to month without making some very painful. So this is a new reality that has sharpened since the beginning of the century. So I think your argument is very good because the working class has to join on the basis of class. The class interests are not with the American empire. Their class interests were served in the period which I consider to be the period in which Soviet Union was the competing force. And therefore, much of the benefits to workers were given. And therefore, excuse me. So therefore, the argument is very good. In fact, what has happened is the left was not able to have these dissatisfied workers give leadership to him, and they went to a person like Trump, to Trumpism, which is based on this gobbled together ideology.
Yeah.
And so therefore, your point is well taken now, but in Lenin's 2003, What is to be Done, his argument was against those who thought the working class through this organization can take the society to change the system. Now, benefits you can get, but until the system is changed, so how do you see that process, or do you see adjustment of the working class can be made again within the system of capitalism? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Raj. Now, I'm going to look at things a little differently than that. First of all, we have to look at the CIO. And in 1945, so the first year after the war, World War II ended in September of 45. Between September 45 and September 46, we had the largest strike wave in American history. Over 116 million days of production were lost in striking. 80% of industry was unionized. Okay, the CIO was a very powerful force, but what happened was that particularly Walter Reuther, he's crucial to understanding this. He had been an anti-communist since about 1938 and went crazy after the war and stuff like that. And basically, like I said, they broke apart the CIO. They destroyed this working class power. And so by 1949, you threw out 11 unions, almost 1 million workers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, so in other words, here's a case where workers had power and then it was lost. It was destroyed from within type of thing. I think, and like I said, you have the transformation from a labor movement to a trade union movement. So that means even where unions remained strong, they were able to benefit their members, and standard of living went up about to 1979, 1980. Since then, the American labor movement has done squat. The labor leadership is utterly bankrupt and corrupt, in my opinion, and that's not going to. We're working to change it, but it's a long way off, type of thing. I think right now you're right that the rise of the Trumpism and the MAGA movement, in my opinion, it's largely because the unions have ignored these people. The unions have ignored most of their own members, truthfully, I think, as well, but especially other people outside the unions. And they haven't had anything, and you have Donald Trump come in and who presents himself very authoritatively, like I can solve all these problems, and people voted for him. And the Democrats weren't much of an option. I think Biden was better, but not by a whole hell of a lot. And you've got that problem. And so that we can't count on the Democrats, that we've got to go back and build a left that we haven't had in a very long time. That's my point. So thank you. Matt, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Kim. Next, I'm going to go to Sharon. Is your hand still up, Sharon?
No, it's not up right now.
Okay. Let's go to Citizen of the Planet.
Yes, thank you. So, Kim, you may have just answered my question. I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to pose my question in a different way than what you may have already addressed. First of all, I just want to interject. When I asked you about the highly unstable weather in the Midwest, I didn't realize that you had done YouTube posted presentations on climate change. And
yes,
one thing I was sort of interested about and trying to plant in certain activist friends' ears is why there isn't organizing around the huge amounts of global warming gases that these wars have put into the atmosphere. And this probably goes back to industrial warfare beginning, as far as I know, in World War I. Martin Luther King said, if mankind doesn't put an end to war, then war will put an end to mankind. But I don't think he envisioned that being through climate change and industrial war. My question is that you may have already answered. You know, the problem I see in the United States and in countries like Britain is that in the United States, the voters just keep ping-ponging back and forth between what I call the Democrats and Republicans. And I see, you know, the same thing happens in Britain. They just ping-pong back and forth between Labor and the Tories. And I see, you know, at these No Kings rallies, people like Bernie Sanders is always there to what I consider, you know, try to co-opt these rallies back into just voting for the Democrats again. So how do we get around this fact that, you know, this duopolistic system that we have just has these voters ping-ponging back between the same two parties and never getting out of that trap? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I have done a fair amount of work on climate change. In fact, I've got a really strong article on that list from 2017 if folks are interested. But the larger question that you ask, how do we keep the voters from ping-ponging back and forth? One, it's a very difficult question, but the fact is we on the left have failed to create an alternative that they can go to. I think we're seeing some efforts. You see DSA doing some organizing, and they've got big numbers. But I think that, I mean, I encourage them. I send them some money. I don't do much work for them, but because I think they're insufficient. Part of the big problem I think that we on the American left are facing is that most of us do not take a global approach to understanding the world. That we look at it as just the U.S. It's a very nationalistic base. It's part of this American exceptionalist crap that we've been raised with all our lives, to think that what goes on in the United States is the only thing that's important, et cetera, et cetera. I think that we have to take a global approach, and I've been doing that ever since I've gotten, you know, I was in the Marine Corps during Vietnam. I turned around while on active duty. Fortunately staying out of Vietnam too. But since then, I've understood that we have to take a global approach. And I think we have much more in common with the people of the world than we do with the elites of any of these countries, whether in the so-called global north or global south. So I think part of the thing is even among ourselves. So, for example, I use the concept of empire. I think it's absolutely clear that's what the United States is, that this country is the heartland of that empire, and we've got to challenge and disassemble the empire any way we can. Now, that's not going to happen if it's just the left. We've got to go out and we've got to make ties and we've got to connect with these people who we say we champion, that being workers, etc. But I also think it's important that that we understand working people are not all good or all bad. It's just like women are not all good or all bad. Blacks aren't all good or all bad. So we've got to learn to deal with people in reality. And so to work with working class organizations means that we're going to find some that are really good and some are really bad. And we have to start to learn to discern the good from the bad and work with the good. Things like this. But I think we also have to assert that we have to take a global approach. We have to care about, understand, and eventually build ties with working people around the world, and this includes the countries of Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East, which is something most Americans don't do, although obviously that's changed somewhat around Gaza and now Iran. Perhaps we had it during Vietnam. We have to go back to that, in my opinion, because we have more in common with these folks than we do with the elites of any country. Okay, thank you.
If I may
Thank you,
put
Kim.
in one sentence, I think Iran might disassemble the empire.
I think there's a good chance.
All right, now we go to Stan. Stan, please unmute yourself. And by the way, if you want to ask questions, please raise your hand by the icons down at the bottom of your screen. Use Zoom icons. Thank you. Go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, hi. Though I live in Oakland, I attended the No Kings rally in Pleasant Hill yesterday, partly because I'm part of this Contra Costa group called Diablo Valley Resistance. Well, Mehmet is actually part of it too. And there was about 3,500 people there, and that's pretty impressive for a suburban city of only about 30,000. And also there were multiple demonstrations throughout Contra Costa County. But anyway, one thing about it, one part that was very good, there were far, far, far more anti-war signs than I've seen in the past. Not just about Iran, but also about Gaza, about Venezuela, and even a few daring skeptics questioned the war in Ukraine.
Wow.
But the speakers, you wouldn't know it from the speakers. At the speakers of the rally, not one F and one mentioned war and peace. Except maybe one made in a very general sense, we want peace and order or something like that. And I remember in April 2024, there was people probably seen it all over the country. They had this hands off poster with things they wanted Trump to keep his hands off, from the Postal Service to VA, so on and so forth, most of which I supported. But they did not have hands off Gaza, and that was deliberate. And they did have hands off NATO, which was also deliberate. Now, Indivisible's leadership has been swayed a bit since then, but overall, they're hard Democrats. So my question is, I go to these things, some people to the left of me even, there are such things, are such people, criticize me for even going there, says all worthless liberals. Well, it's not worthless liberals. There's giant opportunities there, giant base and giant opportunities. But what's your view about how to, on one hand, sure, let's take advantage of Democratic Party organized events, but how do you do that without at the same time pointing out that in many issues, especially war and peace issues, the Democrats aren't much better than Trump?
Yes, I've noticed. The big problem for the Democrats is they refuse to take on, the empire, and that's not unexpected. But they're doing that, and you're right. They're not much different than Trump. I think part of the thing. Look, the nice thing. See, I live in a town about 30,000 people. We had probably 300 or 400 out on the streets. It's a chance to talk to regular people.
What town?
This is Michigan City, Indiana.
Thank you.
On Lake Michigan, just below the Michigan border. Now, that was a pretty good turnout for our little town, and we were greeted very well by cars driving by and stuff like that. We had covered both sides of the street, and they couldn't get through without seeing our signs and stuff like that. But I think going to these things, yes, I understand the politics are much more liberal than, say, I am, but it gives us a chance to talk to other people. One of the things I've never liked carrying signs personally. But I made a sign this time, and I got into a lot of conversations, and I raised things, and I found that very useful. I don't have any magic wand to wave for us. I think we have to figure it out ourselves, but we have to figure it out with the broadest coalition of people that we can. And I think it's worth going out and talking to people, getting articles. I mean, for example, one of the things, I read the New York Times every day. Yes, I know its limitations, but there'll be articles and they allow for comments. And they've been posting a lot of my comments lately, which has been pretty amazing considering some of the stuff I've written, including on climate change and tying in the empire and the failure of capitalism. That's all been printed in the New York Times comment sheets. So that's the truth. I think, like I said, I don't have any magic solutions, but I think the thing is we've got to talk to people. I think a lot of the left, and I'm speaking very broadly, of course, are really good at sitting on the internet for hours and hours, that we write brilliant articles and stuff. I think, as Vince Emanuele wrote in ZNet the other day, we need to do more organizing and less online stuff that we need to get out there. So I'll stop with that, but thanks for your comments. Okay, Mehmet.
Thank you. Gene, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Well,
Yeah.
Kim, thanks so much. This is a great talk. And like yourself, I'm kind of confused by everything that's going on. But you did a great job of conveying this to us, and I appreciate your talk. I'm
Thank
a
you.
retired union worker, and I still have my dues deducted from my retirement check. And
Wow.
I was my union was the California Faculty Association, which is in the California State University system. And we had a peculiar situation there in that we were always represented as faculty members in the faculty senate, where we set various kinds of policy. But we also voted to join, to form a union and join the California Faculty Association, where we got involved with a lot of different kinds of things. And also, I just want to mention, I was in I was in the Marines from 1957 to 1961, I think, which was after Korea and before Vietnam. And so, even though I'm an atheist, I still thank God that she never sent me into combat, because that was horrible. It was really horrible. And since I came out and associated with people in our Vets for Peace chapter, I've seen people, whose lives are just wasted by the kind of, I think, the delayed recognition of the horrors they had to go. They had to kill people or be killed themselves, and that was really horrible, really horrible.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if I had more to say, but I just wanted to thank you. It's a great talk, and hope you come back and keep associated with us, because we have a good little group here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gene.
Thank you. Thank you. Laura, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay, first, I have a question for you, and then I'll have a follow-up after you answer that. What did your sign say?
My sign said, and it wasn't the best sign in looking at it later, but it said, politically obliterate Trump and all the politicians that support him. Something like that.
Oh, okay.
A four-letter, four-syllable word like obliterate probably doesn't belong on any sign for quick reading.
Well, I
But
guess it
nonetheless.
got people talking.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how you believe May 1st is coming up, and I understand that some of the people are saying that this No Kings rally was building toward having May 1st commemorate a lot more than it usually is in the US. And so my question has to do with what you think about how best to build that and include, how to build and build and build and build toward a general strike. I also, that's the question, but I also wanted to say DSA is not a political party. And I don't know, it's, some people are very tied to the Democrats and some people are not DSA, but it doesn't have the problems associated with being a political party. Like, for example, they can, they just are trying to kick Butch Ware off the ballot for outrageous, stupid things. But I also think that when we empire, I don't know how much working people worry about the fact that the U.S. is an empire, and I don't know whether them becoming more conscious about that, whether that will build that huge ungovernable social movement that we need. But because, it's like somebody mentioned, 2/3, of people are just living paycheck to paycheck, and it's not ideology that's top on their mind. It's paying for medicine and for housing and their kids' education and even a little vacation and a little fun in their lives. And
Right.
so that jumble is sort of where my question is.
Okay, really nice question, Laura. I think the issue, see, here's the thing. Right now, the United States is in incredible debt. Our national debt is over $39 trillion. It has grown. This is just since 1981. So when Reagan came into power, we had less than $1 trillion in debt. Today, under both the Democrats and the Republicans, we're up to $39 trillion. Now, this means that our economic growth has been based on hot checks, insufficient funds, not on solid economic production. Now, so I would argue, and I have written tons of this, and you can look at my list of things I've ranted and raved about. But what you see happening, my analysis is that capitalism is failing for more and more people. Now, what Trump is also doing, so that means as people lose their jobs or they're making less income and stuff like that, they need more social services. What Trump in particular has been doing is robbing the social services to try to feed it into the U.S. military and therefore the empire. And so what it means is we're cutting back on the services needed because capitalism is failing. And we've got to show this connection to people that we meet, and particularly working people. So in other words, the last defense budget was $850 billion. Trump wants to take that up to $1 trillion this year, and then to $1 trillion this year, and then up to $1.5 trillion. Where's he going to get that money? Well, part of it's going to just be writing hot checks, but he's also destroying these social services programs that working people need to survive. And we've got to make that connection. And it's not, you're right, people don't think about the empire, but in my opinion, it's our job in our conversation with people to let them know we have an empire, and that's what they're doing is they're taking from us to allow the empire to expand so they can go into Gaza, so they can go into Venezuela, so they can go into Iran, so they can go into Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have to make that known to them because it's not being on MS Now or much less the New York Times or anything like that. But I think we've got to look at this and try to understand this. And for those that are interested, and I'm sorry I'm blowing my own horn, but like I say, I write a lot, and there's a lot of stuff if you just look through my writings that you'll find addressing different aspects of this, because I do like to write down what I'm thinking, and there's no reason we can't understand some of this stuff. And I think, by the way, most of my writing is pretty clear, so that most people can understand it. It's not all academies and all this other crap, but I try to communicate, not just pontificate, is what I'm trying to do. Okay, Mehmet.
Thank you, Kim. Before we go to the next question, let me jump in to follow up on Stan Wood's question. Stan is not the only one that is complaining of that no wars or, being against the wars was, opposed or were not given a voice here. But social media erupted with a lot of complaints everywhere that the organizers would not allow people to speak about no wars. One reason they brought in was that this is no King's Day and war is not in the agenda right now. So that was the reason that was brought by the organizers. So even if we do go into these, rallies and to talk to people, Kim, what do we talk to them about? To show them that they are getting poorer and poorer? Or are we going to tell them to organize? But if we are going to go to organization, what do we talk with them? Organize for what? Organize where? And this brings the question that what are we really trying to do? Somebody asked me that question, saying that, look, we try to bring people's incomes, the working class, middle class, their income high. But is that going to solve the main question, the main problem? So when we ask them to organize, are we going to organize them to get $5 more for the minimum wage? Or are we going to say, you know what, no matter how much you gain, there is going to be problems. You are still going to stay poor because the system is that way. So let's organize in a political party that represents you and gets rid of the exploitation, gets rid of the classes, and so on and so forth. So if you can, please comment on those. Thank you.
Well, this is the part where every one of you should be telling me what we should be doing, not me telling you. I mean, obviously you raised some good questions, and I'm not trying to be flip, but I do think it's important, first of all, that we have to organize ourselves, that we have to form organizations of our friends, whether through work or school or whatever we go, to try to get people that will work together and think this stuff out. I'm an individual. At best, I try to do my thinking and share it with others. Hopefully that inspires them, or they challenge me. I'm fine with whatever, but they respond to me. Part of the thing is, when you go out and you ask people, how are your lives? Are you happy? Do you think that, Trump promised no war and now he's in war in Iran and elsewhere? These are questions. I mean, I think rather than coming to people with the word, just like the who were the Watchtower folks that come to your door and give you the word. Oops. I don't think we can do that approach. I think we have to go and talk to people and listen. What do they want to do? What's important in their lives? Now, I don't know what the minimum wage in California is right now, but in Indiana, it's $7.35 an hour. And a lot of the red states are that. The problem here, one of the problems we face is that the culture of Indianans, or Hoosiers as we're better known, is just a pleasantness and not willing to shake the boat. Fortunately, you in California have done a lot better job than that, especially in the Bay Area and LA. Those are things. I mean, in LA, you get workers in the tourist industry that are making $30 an hour, minimum wage. So it depends on people's situation, what they're willing to do. But I think the big thing is there is not, in my opinion, I disagree with this concept of a solid working class, if you will. Working class is built up of a lot of people, and I think we generalize and lose that specificity. And we've got to go back and find that. We do that through talking, meeting with them, going wherever we can. Finding our people together. How do we approach things? Working as a collective of 5 or more people to think about this. I think that's the way we've got to go. I think the individual, just an individual, no matter how politically enlightened they are, they're not going to change everybody, because sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. And we have to recognize that. But I think working together with other people, we have a much better chance of finding ways to be right and to approach people and find out what works. There's no simple answer, Mehmet. And I think that we've got to try to work that out. So it's important, say, like we have forums like this where we can share ideas and stuff. But what's the follow-up? What do we get together? Do 5 of us meet, every week? Do we live in the same area or not? That all affects things like that. But we've got to think of things rather than being an individual. We've got to find ways to build our own organizations. Now, obviously, down the road, maybe we get to the concept of a political party. Obviously, it's needed. I recognize that, but I think we're a long way from that. I think we have to build our connections in our community, so that, for example, one of the things happening in the Midwest is there's a growing grassroots movement against these damn data centers, and this is getting people. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, which also gives you an idea of how they think about things, not protection, but management. And the place was filled with people that were pissed off because they're building these damn things and they're having such a big effect on the environment. But going and talking to people and putting out our ideas to people, not these not these idealized folks, but as men and women who eat and breathe and have sex and everything else differently, find ways to connect to them. And I think that's the crucial thing.
Okay, thank you. Next, we go to Susan. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, Kim.
Hi, Susan.
I think you know me.
Yeah.
Could you put your email in the chat so I could renew our communication?
Yeah, surely.
Thanks for your presentation.
Well, thank you.
I wanted to say a few things.
Okay.
Let me see. Well, what I think happened yesterday is that the movement at large since October, No Kings, to include locations way beyond the big cities.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's significant, and you represent that. The second thing is that before I went to the Oakland demonstration, I listened to KPFA radio, which was doing an all Pacifica program for about 9 hours yesterday.
Oh.
So it's I'm sure it's in the archives if you want to take a look at it. It was very interesting because there were people from Florida and of course Minnesota and just all around talking about what their demonstrations were like, et cetera, et cetera. That was very encouraging. And it's like where Stan, it's like the Contra Costa demonstrations here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say, I forgot to say, I think obliterate is a good word. It's Trump's word.
Exactly.
He uses it all the time. We obliterated their nuclear facility like that. Okay, so my observation of the march in Oakland was that it was not so young, not so many young people, but more than before. Not so many people of color, but more than before. And the signs were great. There was an anti-war contingent, there was a Palestinian solidarity contingent, and a real anti-imperialist feeling to it.
Great.
It's 2 minutes.
Can I say one more thing? I particularly liked the sign that said, "Think for yourself," while it's still legal.
Thank you. Good. I did put my email in the chat. Anybody that wants to communicate, we'll try, and I'll get to you as soon as I can.
Thank you. Sheila, go ahead, please. Let's observe the 2 minutes question and comments period. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the presentations. It's really, really interesting. I'd like to know your opinion about why the left is so segregated. And if you think that is a problem. And some people get annoyed, but like, for example, even this group is relatively segregated. So if you could give your opinion and advice. Thanks.
Well, I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheila, but I assume you're talking racially segregated?
Yes.
Okay. I think this has been a problem for a long time. I think that the repression that directed against particularly blacks and Latinos during the Vietnam War stuff, the war on the Panthers, the war on Brown Berets and stuff, took a terrible toll on leadership and stuff like that, and scared a lot of people. I think those of us who have remained in the cause, who seem to be overwhelmingly white, have not addressed this issue forthrightly. And I think part of the thing is that we assume that because we turn out for something, that everybody else should, including people of color. There seems to be little direct reaching out to other groups, to any of these other groups. I know yesterday, in fact, it's very interesting. I have a white woman, she's a working class woman. She worked in the steel mills for 20 years. And she sent me a note yesterday because there was almost few people of color at our demonstration. And she says, I'm disappointed in them. And my answer to her was that, did you go out, or did you and your friends go out and reach out to the NAACP or churches that are black led and invited them and encouraged them to come and stuff like that? I think the larger issue that we're dealing with, and this is something why my book I think is going to be real important, is I look at the role of white supremacy and racism. And I think it's crucial to confront. What we had in my study was that, like I said, the packing house workers addressed it head on, while the steel workers ignored that. And I've got data stuff from Gary in 1937 with surveys of black steel workers that nobody's ever seen. And a lot of this. So I'm raising this issue. We've got to confront it. It's not just going to happen naturally. Those of us who are white are not just wonderful people. I mean, I know we all are, but that's not enough. We have this weakness, and that we've got to go and invite people that don't look like us, who might not be expected, to try to find ways to work with them. And it's just like working class people, people who identify working class, they're not going to come just because it's happening. We need to find ways into their groups, whether PTAs or, like I say, church groups or anything like that, different ways to get in and invite them and make people feel welcome. But it's an ongoing issue, and I thank you for raising that. I really hope, and I'm sorry to sound like a capitalist, but I hope that, when my book comes out, folks will look at that and look at the arguments that I make about these issues, and that we take this on. We've got to. So thank
you so much. Now we go to Norma. Please unmute yourself, Norma. Norma?
Okay, leave me unmuted.
There you go.
You are.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Kim. Good job.
Hello, Norma.
Naturally.
Yeah, I saw you.
I've put a few comments into the chat, and I hope you think they're as brilliant as I do. I want to take issue again, although I'm challenged each time I do from particular sources. People don't want to be categorized as workers. People think of that as being identified immediately from the cradle as slaves to our owners, and they don't want to see themselves as that's their belonging category. We people of conscience, of course, have a different understanding. We've been, quote, educated to think otherwise, or accept the term put upon us from the Russian Revolution on. The other thing is, I posted a link to Vijay's Monday presentation. Vijay Prashad presented at the expat home in northern Mexico. I forget the name all the time.
Okay.
Of and he kept on about what's going on here, what's going on there, and I chimed in. I said, "What you're telling us all is that communism is happening. Communism is happening." And he said, he ended up, he agreed. You know, he's always very agreeable. He
That's
agreed,
2 minutes.
and then he said, "But what's necessary is for people to be able to develop the ideas, to get together. It's not a matter of saying communism, communism over and over again, but of looking at processes and abilities to take on the change of the society as they're
Time,
telling
2 minutes.
themselves they need to
Yeah.
do."
Thank you so much, Norma.
Thank you.
Kim, are you going to respond or?
There's not much I can say. I mean, I think, when you go up to somebody, probably most of us don't want to go up and say, "Hi, I'm a communist," whether you are or not, or whatever like that. Part of the thing is to genuinely be interested in people and trying to learn about them, and in that process, revealing however much you feel comfortable with at that time. I don't think it's good to throw our most out of the norm part of our identities right there out in their faces and stuff like that. I mean, that's just going to drive people away. But I think there are ways we have to learn to communicate with ordinary people of all different colors, all different ages, all different sexes, etc. And I think
Let me tell you
important.
something. A lot of people that I say I'm communist to say, "Yes, good."
Yeah, let's move on then. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Norma, and the response, Kim. I'm going with those who have not spoken yet. So Sharon, you are next. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I have a comment about some of the history that you mentioned, as well as something current. So the Communist Party built the CIO. In those days, the left was the Communist Party, and the Communist Party was the left. And they did a very good job, which is why they were smashed. And by Ruther was the only on the front lines of those who were going about smashing the CIO. And you also mentioned some workers, but you didn't mention others, the garment workers, the tobacco workers, the teachers. And about what's going on right now, I think it's wrong to say that they are not organizing. I don't know who you were referring to when you said they. I guess you meant the left in general. I think it varies across the country, and certainly more needs to be done. And certainly you're right that the working class can't stand up for itself without organizations. It can't just be a chaotic mass that's called together by some national callers together every once in a while. But here in the Bay Area, there's a lot of organizing going on. And Susan was right about yesterday's march in Oakland. And, there's a group called Faith in Action that is going about talking to every church congregation they can get in, every synagogue and every mosque. And they call for, large actions, not just talking to people inside their own buildings. And there's the veterans who are organizing for peace. There are many grassroots organizations, and yes, more needs to be done. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think it's true that the left has failed in every way to organize people.
That's 2 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. In general, I agree with most of your comments, but I want to go back to your comments on the CIO. the left was not just the Communist Party, and the Communist Party was not just the left. There were a range of people, everything, of course, from your Trotskyists, socialists, etc., your black nationalists, your Mexican nationalists. You have white rank and filers and stuff like that. So it varies. I think the role of the Communist Party personally has been, in some places it's been crucial, other places it's been non-existent. As far as the CIO period, it's much more complex than you suggest. But also part of the thing, I mean, in some unions, such as the steel workers in the Chicago area, there were very few communists. In other places, they were key, such as the packing house workers, they played key roles. It's a much more diverse than that. But the rest of your comments I agree with, and I'm delighted to see people are doing that. But believe me, as someone who has lived in the Bay Area for a long time, and where Susan and I met was in the plant closures project, which I spent the whole 80s working with, as did she. I'm aware of organizations in the Bay Area, but I want to tell you, the Bay Area is not what the rest of the country is like. You guys are living in a friggin' paradise organizationally. And no, I'm serious. So anything you're doubtful out there, thank whoever you think to say better to you than say here in Northwest Indiana. That being said, there are good people everywhere, and people are struggling and try to find ways to change things. But it's in the left in the Bay Area is just qualitatively stronger than any place, probably other than maybe New York and Boston, maybe LA. But outside of a few big cities with a long history of struggle and stuff like that, the left is not very present. And I think that we have to address that however we can, to whatever way. But I'm delighted people are reaching out. I'm glad to see they're working in churches. In the plant closures project, we used to have workers in the pulpits that would go out once a year and reach out to the churches, things like that. So yes, we need to be as creative as possible. We need not to limit ourselves, I think, in reaching out. I think more people are open to what we have to say if we'll treat them with respect, if we'll listen, and if we will try to get them to work with us. I think that's happening. I think the failures of the Trump, especially the second administration, are troubling to a lot of people. Look at what happened in Minneapolis, where people came together under pressure. I think that's extremely important that we try to understand that process in there. And by the way, Tom, what's his name? He's a right-wing writer for the New York Times. Ironically, I mean, he's a Friedman. He's a Zionist. I can't stand the idiot, but he wrote the most moving piece about what happened in Minneapolis, which is where he's basically from. It brought me to tears. And I never thought I'd say that about anything Tom Friedman wrote. But it's very, very important about getting together with our neighbors and trying to reach out, things like that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, there are 3 hands up, and all of them have spoken. So I'm going to go with Richard.
I thought I saw Sheila Hamada's hand.
Sheila, I thought Sheila spoke, no?
Yeah, Sheila spoke. I'm almost certain.
Yes,
I don't
sorry,
see her hand.
I
No,
forgot to
that's
lower up
okay.
my hand. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Thank you. I wanted to get back to the trade union movement real quick. And that is that there's a real scission in the trade union movement between currently, and I think this presents a real problem. Between the right wing and in particular the unions that are in the so-called defense industry, and those who are not. And I guess I'm kind of wondering is how do we approach the right wing elements? How do we get out of the military industrial complex in our organizing. If you could maybe address that. Thank you. Oh,
You
I'm
want
sorry.
50
Yeah,
words
50.
or less, huh?
Yeah. No, 10.
Look, first of all, I think we ought to. The defense industry is going to be a big problem. First of all, it's a long-term problem. I think as far as approaching unionized workers, I would focus on those like SEIU, the healthcare workers, things like that. I think they're people that the more multiracial membership, I think, is generally better off to approach, at least initially, than the overwhelmingly white male defense industry. So that's one thing. But I mean, you raise a really phenomenal question. Is that about our society going forward? Now, if you go and look at my book or my article on climate change for 2017, one of the things that I'm arguing is that we cannot continue with economic growth. It's killing us. And it's killing us because any type of energy expended, most of it's greenhouse gas related, so oil, coal, natural gas. And when that's used, what it does is it goes up and attacks the atmosphere, and it weakens the atmosphere, allowing more heat to come in, and that comes in gets trapped. Growth is killing us. We have to start thinking about a no-growth society. A journal I work with is Green Social Thought that folks might be interested in, because we're looking at a lot of these issues. We cannot continue as status quo. This is killing us, and it's only going to get worse. Like I think we mentioned earlier, the weather in the Midwest is changing phenomenally. We're seeing sometimes 40 degree differences between days. It's going all up and down. I'm worried about how it's going to affect agriculture and especially food production. These things, we cannot, this war in Iraq, almost something that nobody's touching about, is every bomb, every missile, whatever, is when it hits, it throws shit up into the atmosphere again. It's attacking the atmosphere. It's allowing more heat to get in. It's destroying us. Now, that's only multiplied when we talk about oil, when they hit an oil tanker or they hit a refinery or something like that. And by the way, I think Iran has total right to defend itself. It was attacked for no reason at all except for support Netanyahu. But the point is, the left is not taking on the issue of degrowth, and I think we've got to. We cannot keep growing. So that means we have to start thinking about what kind of industry do we have? What kind of work do we do? These are big issues, and this is gonna take us for the rest of our lives to try to work out. But we've got to do it. I don't think the left is looking at that much. I think there's sort of an implicit bias that we're going to continue as we have, and we can't. I'm absolutely certain of that. But we've got to start looking at that, and that raises a lot of those issues that you just barely scratched the surface on, Richard. And we can go on for hours, and I don't have hours right now. But again, look at the stuff I've written on this. I think you'll find it. I think one of the things I do is I address issues that most people aren't looking at, and if you're interested, they're worth reading. All right. Mehmet.
Thank you. The last two hands are Gene and a Citizen of the Planet. Go ahead, Gene.
Gene? Where'd Gene go?
All right. Am I?
Oh, there.
Okay. I just wanted to say something about our two political parties, because it's truth, they're both identical when it comes to imperialism. But there are other issues that are important. I'm thinking about Roe versus Wade, imperial rights, the right of women to control their bodies. People have said that, if men got pregnant, abortion would be a sacred right, and there's no way they'd take it away from us. So, and the other one is gay rights. This is under attack. Gay marriage, it's kind of ridiculed a lot. But one thing Biden did that I respect him for is that he declared Stonewall Inn a national monument, and he went there and spoke on behalf of gay rights there, and that's something we should be looked at, because how do gay people get their rights? Through violence, through the Stonewall riots. So I just wanted to make that comment, and thank you for all your work you do.
Okay, Gene. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Mo.
Yeah, the last speaker is going to be Citizen of the Planet. Go ahead, unmute yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to address this issue about, I guess, white leftist organizers reaching out to the Black community. First, I'd like to interject. Forget about the NAACP. The NAACP has become a museum piece, irrelevant to the lives of most ordinary Black people, except for the NAACP self-promoting image award ceremonies given out to Black celebrities, and that's about the limit of their relevance these days. So you're talking about reaching out, and feel free to say if you haven't had a chance to think about this enough yourself. But I brought up this issue here in these forums before about older, what I'll call angry white male attacks on so-called identity politics. Black identities, so-called Black identity politics. And these attacks seem to occur when Black people talk about their oppression. And this is like blaming Black people from the left. With regard to reaching out, I go to the hood every week or two. No one I've come across there has ever heard of even KPFA. So speaking about lack of reaching out. But most students, even on the UC Berkeley campus, less than 2 miles from KPFA, have ever heard of KPFA. So I just want to say, the tirade about identity politics has been led recently by, of all people, Norman Finkelstein, who's gone way out of his lane to attack Black people about on the issue of identity politics. Forms of white identity politics are not condemned by these older white males, just so-called Black identity politics. And we've seen, Gene just bring up the issue of gay rights. White gay rights are not attacked as identity politics. So I'll just wrap up by saying, again, feel free if you haven't had time to really think about this, but in your organizing, what do you think about older white leftists blaming Black people and trying to tell Black people, you have to wait until after the revolution before we address your rights and address your issues. Right now, we just want you to address our issues. Thank you.
Okay. Very interesting questions. I don't, it's hard to say. I mean, I've been consciously, and I was conservative. I went in the Marine Corps in 1969, which was not an astute career choice, as I think everybody would recognize. I inadvertently got placed into fighting racism, and I've been doing so since 1971, racism and white supremacy. So I don't relate to this. You have to wait for after the revolution shit. But I think the thing about identity politics is we think that all members of any group, whether they're Black, whether they're gays, whether they're women, that they all are the same, they all see the world the same, they all act the same, and that's nonsense. I mean, you have Blacks that are tremendously revolutionary, that have been on the front line, have risked and sometimes paid with their lives. Many have paid with years of incarceration and stuff like that. But some Blacks have been just as toady to the white establishment as you could, the most conservative white. And we have to admit this. we have to deal with people as individuals, at least as a starting point. Now we can get together with people. We can work with them as individuals. We can choose how we're going to approach the world. But think of this. Does a white woman who fights racism, does she do it because she's white or because she's a woman? Neither one. She does it because she has chosen in her particular situation that that's not the way she wants to live, that she wants a different society, and she's made those choices. And that's the way it is, in my opinion, for almost everybody. You know, that all workers aren't saints, and on the other hand, all workers aren't devils. So I don't buy into this stuff, but I think we have to recognize that we live in a society where white people have been treated much better than people of color. It's changing. We're not in where we were in the early 60s. Thank goodness. It's still got a long ways to go. That's still true for women, for gays, for almost everybody. And so I don't, I don't want to really get off on this because I just don't think it's the way to go. I think I think the basis of our politics has to be respect for the individual. That's a starting place. And from there, take it to wherever it'll go. It may not go where you want, but you're going to learn a lot and they're going to learn from you. And I think that's a question. Raj, I see your comment in the chat about everybody's a worker. Well, that may be true in a detached way, but people don't think of themselves in every case as a worker. They think of themselves as a parent, as a sibling, as all kinds of different things. They think of themselves as a Catholic. They think of themselves as a Jew, whatever. There's many different ways that people look at their reality. Now, ultimately, I agree that we all work and we all get exploited, and there's ways that we can unite. But we have to recognize that consciousness doesn't come to us just because we work for a living. I can't tell you how many people, I'm now retired. I've worked for over 50 years in all kinds of situations, all kinds of different industries and stuff like that. And this is what I've seen firsthand, that people are individuals and we got to respect them. So
Can I just quickly respond to Kim?
Yeah, if I can just say in one sentence, with all due respect, Raj, I think that you are totally ignoring the issue of intersectionality in this
guys,
society.
I think we are. That's not the subject of this talk anyway, and we are already like 8 minutes past the time. I am going to apologize to Judith. Your hand is raised, but it was after we said, the last three hands. But I want to thank Kim for his presentation and everybody who participated. Please go to our website, icssmarks.org, get into our mailing list so you get the notifications and contribute if you can. Hopefully, we'll see you next week as well. And like I said, we are going to be talking about the Middle East from somebody from that region. So with that, I'd like to close the session, Alan, and thank everybody for participating, especially Kim for taking the time and speaking to us. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Give me time to read the last messages that were posted.
I just want to say that what's common between Kim, me, and